Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into the 2004 film Crash, but we're not just going to talk about it as a movie. Nope. We're going to treat it like a powerful social experiment, a mirror that shows us all the hidden biases that are constantly shaping our world. So how do these hidden biases actually shape our reality? Well, that's the big question, isn't it? We're going to use this film like a laboratory. It's a place where we can watch what happens when people's perfectly separate worlds and all their hidden assumptions are forced to literally crash into each other. All right, before we jump right into the film's drama, we've got to get our toolkit ready. Let's quickly go over a few key ideas, the concepts that are really pulling the strings behind the whole story.
It all kicks off with prejudice, that instant gut-level judgment you might make about someone before you even know their name. It's an internal thing, right? An attitude, a feeling. But it's like a tiny seed that can grow into some really, really big problems.
Okay, and this is super important. There's a huge difference between prejudice and discrimination. Think of it this way. Prejudice is the attitude. It's what's going on in your head. But discrimination, that's when that thought becomes an action. It's the moment someone is treated differently, unfairly, because of that internal belief. It's the real-world consequence. So you might be asking, where does all this prejudice even come from? Well, a lot of the time, it's fueled by stereotypes. These are like mental shortcuts. Our brains are lazy, right? They love to sort things into simple boxes to make sense of a complicated world. But here's the catch. Those boxes are usually way too simple and often just plain wrong, and that can lead to some massive, even dangerous misunderstandings. And it gets even crazier. When those stereotypes get turned into labels that society starts sticking on people, words like thug or foreigner, something really powerful can happen. There's this thing called labeling theory, and it basically says that if you call someone something enough times, they can actually start to believe it. They can internalize that label and end up becoming the very thing everyone expected them to be. It's a total self-fulfilling prophecy. Okay, so now that we have our concepts, let's jump into the movie and see how this all plays out. We're going to see how these ideas create these completely separate worlds for each character. Worlds that are, you guessed it, absolutely destined to collide. So first up, we meet Farhad. He's a Persian immigrant, a shop owner, and he just feels completely under attack all the time. He's misunderstood, he's targeted, he feels so pushed to the margins of society that his fear just completely takes over. And in his mind, the only thing he can do to protect his family is buy a gun. So he goes to buy that gun, and what happens? The gun shop owner just unleashes on him with all these racist taunts. I mean, it is a textbook example of prejudice in action, a snap judgment based on nothing more than Farhad's appearance and his accent. Sociologists have a term for this. They call it thin slicing. It's when you take one tiny slice of a person and use it to instantly, and almost always wrongly, judge their entire character. He's immediately summed up as a threat. Then we've got Daniel, the locksmith. And his story is a perfect illustration of what the great sociologist W.E.B. Du Bois called double consciousness. See, Daniel knows exactly who he is. He's a hardworking guy, a great dad, but he also has to live with this constant awareness of how other people see him. He's forced to see himself through their eyes. So when his wealthy white client, Jean, looks at him, she doesn't see a professional. She sees a potential criminal. And that constant pressure, always being judged, it can lead to this really interesting psychological phenomenon called stereotype threat. It's this incredible risk of you actually conforming to a negative stereotype, partly because you're so stressed out about being judged by it. And we see this play out just perfectly with another character, Anthony. So, this is Anthony. He is hyper-aware of all the stereotypes about young Black men. In one scene, he's complaining that his waitress is stereotyping him as a poor tipper. But then, under the weight of that judgment, what does he do? He leaves without tipping. It's this tragic, ironic loop where his reaction to the bias actually ends up confirming the very stereotype he despises. Right, so here's the most important part. It's easy to watch this and think, wow, what a dramatic movie. But these aren't just movie scenes. They're basically condensed versions of very real social forces that are at play in our world every single day. So let's take Daniel the locksmith. The suspicion he faces, that's not just made up for the movie. There's a famous study, you can see the data here, where researchers sent out identical resumes for job applications. The only difference was the name at the top, and what they found was staggering. Applicants with white-sounding names got way more callbacks than applicants with black-sounding names. It's the same thing. Just like Daniel is judged before he even picks up a tool, a person's name alone can literally be a wall blocking them from an opportunity. And you can just go down the list. Almost every major moment in this film has a direct parallel in real-world data. Officer Hanson's terrible misjudgment, that's racial profiling, and we have studies that show it's a real issue in policing. For Hod's fear and isolation as an immigrant, that reflects documented rises in xenophobia and hate crimes. Even Anthony and the tipping situation. Yeah, there's research on how service staff are biased based on who they think will tip well. So the drama in Crash, it's not just drama. It's a mirror showing us documented, real-world social inequality.
So what's the big takeaway here? Well, once you understand these concepts, it's like you've been given a new pair of glasses. It's a powerful tool that lets you see your own world and your own life in a completely different light.
And that tool has a name. It's called the sociological imagination. And all it really means is the ability to see the connection between your own personal experiences, your own life, and the larger social forces out there. It's about linking your individual story to the big, sweeping story of society and history.
So once you start using it, you begin to see all these invisible strings at play in everyday life. Suddenly, a traffic stop isn't just a traffic stop anymore. You see how it's shaped by bigger ideas about race and authority. A rude comment isn't just a random comment. You can feel the history of stereotypes and prejudice behind it. And on the flip side, an act of kindness isn't just a nice gesture. It can actually be a tiny act of rebellion against all that bias.
So in the end, that's the real challenge of a film like Crash. It's not just about watching the characters on screen. It's about turning that lens back on ourselves. It pushes us to ask this one last, really provocative question. Which of your interactions today were shaped by forces you couldn't see? And more importantly, what happens now that you can?